Hi, this is Emily of Beauties and Headcanons. Thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media.
Hey, this is Jerry Strauss, host of Hollywood Happy Plays here on Public House Media. Thank you for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media. And once you're done with this episode, I hope you'll come check out my show, Hollywood Happy Plays, where we talk with and about all of your favorite names from the worlds of TV, movies, music, whatever entertains you. We are getting up close and personal with those people right here on HHP. A new show comes out every 2 weeks, so don't forget to subscribe on iTunes so you never miss an episode of Hollywood Happy Place. Thank you again for checking out the following broadcast on Public House Media.
Throughout history, the course of sports has been shaped by one thing: the fans.
From the moments you never dreamed of,
Bobby Wilkins has saved the USA's life in this World Cup. Paul, the runner, loose ball, it's good. Gonzaga, the slipper still fits.
To the moments that still give you nightmares.
Behind the bag, it gets through Buckner. Here comes Knight, and the Mets win it. He's in. Patriots win the Super Bowl. Brady has his fifth.
through the good and the bad, fans have helped change the games we watch and the players we love.
They may not be the most logical people,
You are a factory of sadness. I'll see you Sunday.
But they know their teams better than anybody.
They'll blow in the ninth.
you may not always see them, but you know where to find them.
After all, there's nothing quite like the view from the cheap seats.
Broadcasting is part of the Public House Media Network.
Grab a chair and enjoy all there is in
The cheap seats.
And happy Friday morning to everyone out there. I am Matt Coyne, joined along with Jake Holmes. Jake, how you doing this morning?
Oh, man, I couldn't be better. How are you, Matt?
I'm doing great. So we broke like 80 here this week, Jake. Isn't that crazy?
Oh, it's wild. It was like 62 here yesterday in Pittsburgh. It was terrible. But
yeah, yeah, that's too hot. That's just insane. Yeah, so again, welcome, and I'm so glad that you're able to be part of this show. I think we have a fun show planned this morning. We're going to be talking racing with Bryce Burge later in the show. We're going to be touching on NFL, which is my favorite topic, as well as I think a fun thing. We always like to do little different things here on the Friday show with drafts, and today we're going to be talking about really the cities that it's kind of the saddest to be a sports fan. So we'll get into all of that. But as always, we're going to start here with our quick headlines. And Jake, the first thing I want to start with, of course I'm going to start with a Pittsburgh-ish thing. This past week, Garrett Cole gave up a home run to his brother-in-law, Brian Crawford. Jake, that's always amazed me. They made a big deal about it with this one, which is interesting because they've played against each other a lot, but because the Astros are, pitching just out of their minds, and Garrett Cole is right in the mix with that, they made a big deal. Now, Astros went on to win that game, but Jake, how would what do you think those family dynamics are at family get-togethers with this?
Probably hilarious. I would love to be a fly. I would love to be a fly on the table at the picnic. But yeah, I mean, to your point, like you said, they're making a big deal out of this. Brendan Crawford's hit home runs off of Garrett Cole before.
Yes, yeah.
Of course, when he was in Pittsburgh and nobody really cared about the Pirates. But at the same time, I mean, it's Garrett Cole right now is pitching the best he ever has. He's got 100 strikeouts and 10 starts. So maybe it is a little bit bigger of a deal now because he's significantly better now than he was with the Pirates.
Yeah. Yeah. So going into other things, Jake, I think you had something you wanted to bring up this morning as well.
Yeah, of course. Speaking of NFL, you were just alluding to ex-Bills lineman Richie Incognito undergoing psychiatric evaluation because he threw a dumbbell at a gym member. I feel like some of us that have followed Richie Incognito's career maybe feel like this is a little bit, a little bit late.
Yeah. It is what it is.
Yeah, because
guess,
like the bullying stuff and all that. But yeah, what do you think of the whole thing, man?
It's funny because people said he kind of. I know a few Buffalo fans, and they've said he's kind of settled down since he's been there. It seems like he's kind of, I don't want to say been normal, but you know what I'm saying. It seems like he's settled down a little bit. But so when I saw this, I was actually kind of surprised. I know that there were some issues going on, but. Obviously, the anger monkeys are still striking old Richie over there. So, but yeah, I don't I think that's interesting. But moving on this morning, we're not going to really touch on the NBA this weekend or during this show, but wanted to obviously touch on the Celtics Cavaliers series with Celtics on Wednesday night. Pretty handily taking care of the Cavaliers, taking them down 96-83. Celtics take a 3-2 lead in the series, and it seems like your bold prediction is coming true. Even though it didn't happen before this show, it seems like that prediction's well on its way.
Well, I mean, Boston has to be able to win on the road. They don't have to. I mean, they can just win they can just win 4 at home. But you don't want to try that with LeBron James. I think that this is going to go 7. But yeah, I mean, it's certainly interesting that's the Celtics are going to be what the Cavaliers are here in about 5 years. They've got good young core: Rozier, Jaylen Brown, of course, Jason Tatum. They're going to be special for a long time. And if they can go to the finals this year, and a lot of these guys' first or second year, man, watch out for them for a while. But finally, speaking of championships this time of year, the Stanley Cup Final, my favorite topic, the Stanley Cup Final set, and it's an unlikely story. We're going to be talking about it a little bit more in depth later on in the show. But the Vegas Golden Knights and the Washington Capitals, for the first time in 20 years, the Washington Capitals are in the Stanley Cup Final, and for the first time, obviously ever, this is their first year of existence, the Vegas Golden Knights are headed to take a waltz with Lord Stanley, or at least attempt to.
Yes, yeah. I'll get your take on this a little later in the show, but there's a lot going back and forth with Vegas of. Is this good for the sport, or is it bad for the sport to have a new expansion team? Not even the league. They're obviously. I think it was just around a year ago today that everything was kind of up in arms. With them, all the hubbub of them coming into the league, and so it's interesting. I want to get your take on that later when we talk more about NHL. But when we come back, we hope that you stay with us. We're going to be, Jake and I will be going into a few NFL topics. One that is kind of just buzzing, not just in the sports world, but all around media, all around the United States. So stay with us here on the GC. I'm Matt Coyne, along with Jake Holmes. Right now, we are going to be having Bryce Burge on with us. Bryce, we're going to be talking with him about the Coca-Cola 600, Indianapolis 500, like we said. Bryce is a former analyst of ESPN 970 in Marquette, Michigan, and Bryce is a great friend of Public House Media. So, Bryce, welcome to the show. Good morning.
Good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. So,
I'm still on.
For those non-racing fans out there, there are a couple big races coming up this weekend. for you racing fans, you're very excited. We have the biggest race in the stock car world and lengthwise in the Coca-Cola 600. So, Bryce, we're bringing you on. You're the guru of this. If you could just touch a little bit on the Coca-Cola 600, talk maybe a little bit about just how it seems like there's 5 drivers kind of separating right now, and just your take on this weekend's race.
Yeah, it should be a really exciting race. This is kind of like the marathon of NASCAR races at a track that's pretty comfortable for a lot of people in Charlotte. NASCAR's having their second straight weekend there after having their All-Star race there last week. Kevin Harvick, who's sitting third in points, won that race, the All-Star race. So he's looking to be the 8th driver to win the All-Star race and the Coca-Cola 600 in the same year. It'd be the first time since Kurt Busch did it in 2010. And Kevin Harvick continues to be just a bright spot so far in this NASCAR season, as a lot of drivers have kind of struggled to find their identity. A lot of drivers have kind of struggled to find consistency, and it's allowed kind of the Bushes, Brad Keselowski, Logano, Harvick to really kind of step up a little bit more and kind of separate from the pack. You get some kind of guys like Clint Bowyer, Denny Hamlin, Martin Truex Jr., who's going to be a force this weekend, have kind of caught up and like stayed around them to be within striking distance, but it's really just been a consistent process from those top 5 drivers this year, at least in my opinion, in terms of separating the has and the has-nots in NASCAR. So as you're coming into Charlotte and you have so many racing groups that come from that area, the North Carolina, Virginia area. This is always a big one for a lot of fans, big ones for a lot of families and drivers, and it should be really exciting to see who just wants to reclaim their season.
Great. Jake, I think I had some questions for you about just leading into the Indy 500. Jake, you want to go ahead with that?
Yeah. I actually had one question about the Coke 600. Okay, Bryce. So the Coca-Cola 600, of course, it's a little bit different of a shape than most tracks. It's more of a tri-circle, as well as the Poconos. The Poconos is pretty similar. What is it? What's different about that, and what like advantages do different drivers have with that different structure of a race?
Well, it's a tri-oval, which is actually more consistent in NASCAR in terms of the actual shape of the speedway. Tri-ovals are like Chicagoland, California, Kansas City. Pocono is a completely different animal in itself, where there's 3 established turns with 3 straightaways that have very different lengths. When you get to a place like a tri-oval, it's still an oval, but it kind of peaks in towards the start-finish line. And in terms of the architecture of a racetrack, if you point the start-finish line more towards the middle, then that way you can kind of see better in terms of the racetrack, like compared to Indianapolis, where it's a very structured rectangular oval. You have a lot of blind spots that you can't see at that racetrack. But if you go to a similar one in like Michigan International Speedway, then you can see pretty much the whole track because of that shape. When you get to a place like Charlotte, though, it's very wide in terms of being able to create multiple lines. You can see drivers go up to the top of the raceway and just hug the wall the entire time that they go around the track. You get other ones that dive real low down to the bottom white line and are barely staying in the field of racing. And so when you have that, it creates a lot of new opportunities to pass, a lot of different ways in terms of handling and setting up your car. If you listen to a broadcast, you start hearing about like spring rubbers and handling and tire pressure and all this other kind of stuff. And depending on how that car is set up, depends on where they're at in the racetrack, what kind of lines that they have, what kind of drafting partners and pairings and possibilities that they have. So all these things come up into play, and you get a track like Charlotte where you can get some high speeds, you get some great opportunities to avoid wrecks, but also get into them. It creates some really compelling racing. You get a 600-mile race like Coca-Cola 600, and you have some really great racers that have always struggled at a course like that, specifically because they will get too excited at the beginning. They've got so much opportunity in front of them in the track that Charlotte provides, and they'll lose the race in the first 200 miles. And you can't win a race in the first 200. You win it in the last 600. So you have to really push to make sure that you're focused on the long haul, which is a very different type of race than what most of these guys are used to.
Sure, of course, and you mentioned a little bit about the of course, which is great information because you don't really think too much about different architectural structures of racetracks. One that you did mention is Indianapolis, and of course the Indy 500s this weekend. What do you make of this year's Indianapolis 500, and which is actually the last of Danica Patrick's career?
I'm happy that Danica Patrick gets a swan song. This has kind of been her exit of racing, especially after her Daytona 500 finish. It is exciting to see her go because she brought a lot to the sport. That being said, I've always kind of been against Danica Patrick because I've always thought that Sarah Fisher or Lynn St. James could have driven circles around her if they got the same kind of quality car that Danica Patrick had. But she brought a lot to the sport, and she kind of helped make IndyCar popular after the whole kart and IRL nonsense in the past. So to make IndyCar back on the map as strong as it has and growing as it has been really good. She's finished in the top 9, which qualified for the little race off for the pole that they've had, which is fairly new to IndyCar racing at the Indy 500 because Indy 500 has always had a month lead up to it with all the different days and all the different practices because it's such a special race. So she'll be starting in that top 9 and having her GoDaddy car and all that other kind of stuff. So I'm happy that she gets an opportunity, and we'll see what she can do up there with that. I think the bigger story though is who's not in the field. Hinchcliffe, everybody's favorite racing Canadian, is not in this race, and he's sitting 5th in points, and he will not be there much longer. The championship point system in IndyCar has a double points race for the Indy 500 in their last race of the year in Fontana. So there was 108 potential points to be won at this race, and Hinchcliffe after 5 races was sitting in 5th with 144 total points. So to have 0 points coming out of this weekend because he did not qualify for the race is going to absolutely destroy his entire season. They were trying to buy off another car to get him in. They were thinking about swapping out him for a teammate. They were trying to get him all in, and they actually announced just earlier this morning that they were not going to pursue that any further, and Hinchcliffe will 100% not be in the Indy 500 this year. And that is just mind-boggling to see a star like that not be in the greatest race of the year for IndyCar.
Yeah, it's that's I did not know that. That's crazy to hear that. Yeah, to be 5th in points, and obviously to be almost all your points. With you saying 108 being available. So, well, Bryce, thank you this morning for joining us. Before you go, we'd love to get your feedback. Who you think's who your picks are this weekend for the Coke 600 and the Indy 500.
If Martin Truex Jr. is on the lead lap at the end of the race, he's going to win it. His dominant performances at these 1.5 mile tri-ovals have really started to shake up, but he's had just terrible luck with them this year. Jimmy Johnson could also be a dark horse, which you wouldn't really think of, but based on his pedigree, but he's just had a terrible year this year. IndyCar, I don't know, because you've got a lot of the guys that are high in points sitting at the bottom of the qualification grid. Ed Carpenter is up there on the pole this year, but I'm probably going to have to go with Newgarden followed by Dixon. Joseph Newgarden's had an amazing year. He's starting 4th. I think he's in a comfortable line where he can really make some moves. But if it gets more fuel base, I would start pushing back further down the line. You might see like a Sato repeat or some of the guys further down there, maybe a Ray Hall. And then one thing too, I'm going to throw it in there. Grand Prix of Monaco is this weekend. It's actually my favorite of the 3, and I just want to plug in a little bit more about Kiki Räikkönen. If he can get a top 3 starting spot, I think this is his race to break through. He's sitting 4th in points as Mercedes and Ferrari keep battling on that lineup right now. And I think that Räikkönen can finally get over that hump and win the Grand Prix of Monaco this year, because he has steadily improved every single year. And after last year's performance where he got caught into an accident and then had to run through the entire field in the last 17 laps to finish 10th and get a championship point out of that, I think that's got him hungry. And I think he'll be able to stop Lewis Hamilton there near the end.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Bryce, for joining us this morning. Busy weekend for racing fans out there. Bryce, where can we follow you in the social media world? We're Twitter, on all that. If so, where can we follow you at?
My Twitter account is that Bryce Burge. It's not a very common name, but I guess there was already one. So it's that Bryce Burge on Twitter, and Facebook, just the same name.
Awesome.
So.
Well, thanks again, Bryce, for joining us. You heard it right here from Bryce Burge. And when we come back, we will be talking about kind of a hot topic here with NFL and some other stuff going on in the NFL. Stay with us here on The Cheap Seat. Week, a couple decisions coming down from the NFL owners, and Jake, we're just going to get into that hot topic right off the bat with, for those of you who don't know, NFL owners recently just instituted a new national anthem policy, which is pretty much saying, that the players, if they are on the field, they must stand for the national anthem. They do have the right, though, that they can stay in the locker room. They do not have to come out on the field. And Jake, as you know, this is brought out of a lot of attention from President Trump to coaches, to owners, to players, to people all through the media. Obviously, everybody has something to say on this. The owners and players and coaches specifically. There's Jake, I'm actually reading here. Malcolm Jenkins came out and tweeted on Wednesday, said that what the NFL owners did has pretty much just taken away the rights of the constitutional rights of the players. He said he obviously disagrees with this decision, and he said this isn't going to silence him from fighting. But then you have other ones. We also have other players who are 100% for what is going on here. And the interesting thing is that New York Jets owner, he was the only one that abstained from this and said that he will actually pay the fines of his players if they decide to kneel. So, Jake, what have you been seeing? What's some stuff that you've been reading that you think is interesting? Maybe if you want your take on it, and just with this whole situation going on.
Sure, and I'm kind of weighing back and forth on it. I don't know if it's a good idea or a bad idea. I think only time will tell. But really, the rule is basically if you have the choice to come out for the national anthem. If you don't want to participate, you don't have to. But then again, just reading and hearing, this isn't about the national anthem. It's, of course, like Colin Kaepernick's. His platform was, police brutality. Correct. And I mean, it's not to a lot of these guys, it's not about the national anthem. So are they going to find ways to protest in other ways? So, I mean, that's interesting, and that could honestly be, even more dangerous for the league. So I'm not really sure, and honestly, for a lot of these, I'm also wondering about the fines that they're about. Of course, I mean, if you're a Jets fan, it doesn't really, or a Jets player, I guess it wouldn't really pertain to you. But say somebody does, break the rule. Is it $5,000? You keep breaking the rule, it goes up to 10, kind of like a uniform violation or something like that.
I'm interested because I was looking for that too, and I couldn't see anything about that.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that's just not kind of set in stone, I guess. And really, I mean, for the players, like you said, a little bit of a mixed reaction. Like Derek Wolfe plays for the Denver Broncos. Like he's all for it. Dak Prescott was like, I'm going to be out there standing.
Yes, I saw that.
But then you see Josh Norman, who of course he's outspoken anyways, obviously, but he's using it as a platform to kind of come back at Donald Trump, to say, oh, is he going to keep talking, is he going to keep talking poorly about us, even if we, obey these laws and everything like that. And whether you like it or not, the NFL has the right to do this. I mean, they have the legal guidelines to be able to do this. It's very similar. Like if you work, now I know that this isn't a multi-million-dollar industry, but if you're working for an insurance company and you have a meeting and they tell you that your calls are now recorded and you have to read a recorded line disclosure. If you don't say that recorded line disclosure several times, compliance is going to fire you. So, I mean, that's whether you like it or not, I guess that they have to do it that way.
Yeah, and it's obviously I respect the owners for coming out trying to get something taken care of. Kim Pagula, the owner of the Buffalo Bills, came out and said, "We are proud of the work the league and our players have done over the course of the year to help strengthen our communities, raise awareness on social injustices," and goes on just to say that she's proud of this. And I was talking, Jake, to my wife last night, and I said, I don't understand what the purpose of this is, and how did they come up with, well, you can stay in the locker room? And she had a good point saying, this will just silence their platform, saying that you're not going to see them on the field. And I do understand that, but especially high-profile players, if Josh Norman does not go out on that field, he's still going to have that spotlight. He knows that people are going to know he was not on that field.
Absolutely. I mean, you get a giant pop from the crowd when these guys come out and they're up, they're throwing their hands in the air, and everything like that. You're going to notice if Josh Norman's not on the field. You're going to notice if, Michael Bennett, of course, well, we only know if he's going to be playing after his video that came out. But like, you're going to notice if these, if you guys, you notice if these guys are on the field. And so, I mean, really, yeah, I mean, it will silence their platform to a point, but really, I mean, if these guys want to protest, they'll still be able to. But no, I completely agree with you. Really, I just think the whole thing's damage control because of the outrage, especially week 3 last year. Of course, the Steelers, they stood in the tunnel while Big Al Villanueva came out and stood. Of course, former Army Ranger. And really, the whole thing's damage control because it really hurt the NFL last year.
Yes, yeah, and it'll be interesting to see, come preseason this season, what kind of all transpires from this. But let's get on to, real quick to some OTAs. Like I said, has started up this last week. There has been a lot of chatter with players who aren't reporting injuries. Jake, I don't know if you saw the Chargers tight end tore his ACL on day 1. So everyone's saying Antonio Gates. When it comes to that, Jake, OTAs, people say, oh, they're not a big deal, or, but then you have somebody like Tom Brady who hasn't shown up, and people are acting like he didn't show up for the Super Bowl. And so that just interests me when it's, like I said, I mean, Ben Roethlisberger, let's go on the Pittsburgh side. I'm cool if he wants to skip OTAs because I don't want him to get hurt in something that for somebody like him, Tom Brady, Drew Brees, is really meaningless.
I couldn't agree with you more, Matt, and I'm glad that you said that, because I was I was thinking that we might have some banter, but but like if you look at it, Tom Brady is over 40 years old. He's won 5 Super Bowls. Yeah. He's been to 8. I mean, who cares if he doesn't show up to OTAs? I mean, what benefits he going to get?
Yeah.
I mean, a player like Hunter Henry, of course, the tight end that tore his ACL for the Chargers, for him it would be good because he's a young up and coming tight end. It's a good thing for him to be there. Very similar to a lot of rookies. You see Mason Rudolph, who's very vocal in Pittsburgh right now. I'm a really big fan of what of him and his persona, if you will. But yeah, him, Brady, Gronk, even Le'Veon Bell. Who cares? I mean, I just don't get the outrage. I mean, if you want, you want to see your players, practice. You want to see your guys practice. Yeah. But really, all it is football and shorts, as Mike Tomlin says.
Yeah, and it's just, I really do understand. I know Rob Gronkowski didn't report. Like I said, Tom Brady didn't report. I know Le'Veon Bell didn't report. I know there's been other ones who haven't reported. And to me, like I said, especially those players. Now, if you're having rookies not showing up, that's a different story. I think that obviously the younger players need to be showing up, need to be making their due, if you will, and going into training camp ready and familiar with the playbook. So I just think it's interesting. And I think the other thing with Tom Brady is that guy shows up. I mean, he has the keys to the place pretty much. I mean, he's the first one there and the last one to leave at night. So I think when this happened, people are like, whoa, dude, he's 40 years old. Give him a break. He's won you guys 5 Super Bowls. I think he can take off OTAs. But anyways, I guess I got a little heated about that, huh, Jake? I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. I get it. It's like the thing with Tom Brady, again, like you said. I mean, he owns the place. The dude takes better care of his body than literally any human being on the planet. And I don't get it. Maybe the outrage came from because it was like, there was that whole, Super Bowl mishap, if you will. Like he wasn't very. Yeah. Rumor has it that he wasn't happy with Belichick for not playing Malcolm Butler. Who knows? I mean, regardless, come early September, Tom Brady's going to be under center for the New England Patriots, and they're probably going to go 14-2 and have home field advantage throughout the AFC playoffs.
And everyone will be like, "Oh, who cares that he didn't show up?" Yeah, you're right. Who cares? Anyways, so we hope you stay with us. When we come back, we're going to be talking about, I think this will be fun, talking about the most cursed, downtrodden sports cities. Jake and I were saying that even if Washington Capitals beat Tampa Bay, they still, I think, are in that. They still haven't done anything. So you'll hear from Jake and myself about who we think the saddest cities to be a fan of. So stay with us, and we will see you back here on the Cheap Seats. Just cities that they want to make you cry. My number one is Cleveland. Everybody says, well, what about the Cavs? No, still Cleveland. I don't care about the Cavs. It's still Cleveland. I don't care that if the Browns come out and win the Super Bowl, Jake, this season, and if the Indians win the World Series and the Cavs come back and win the NBA Finals, it's still Cleveland, Jake. All right?
It's still Cleveland. They have one win since the Cavaliers last won their NBA Finals. The Browns have one win since the last time the Cavaliers won the NBA Finals. It's Cleveland. They blew a 3-1 lead in the World Series. I agree with you. It's still Cleveland.
So we're obviously kind of joking, but there are cities out there that Jake has actually taken some great information to down, and he's going to share that with you. With we have Washington, we have Atlanta, we have Seattle, we have different cities that really are just struggling. One that I said, Jake, is even though they have two sports, Buffalo, you got the Bills and the Sabres. You have the Buffalo has not won in the Super Bowl, and the Bills have not won a championship in the Super Bowl era. The Sabres, I believe, do not have any Stanley Cups. So, and their fans are insane. I just respect their fans. Jake, I don't even know if you do, but I guarantee you know a Buffalo fan, and I guarantee if you know a Buffalo fan, they are insane, especially on the Bills side. So that's kind of one that I go to. I tend to go towards Buffalo because I'm like, they haven't won anything.
You're exactly right. And actually, the first one that I was going to say is Buffalo. That was the first one I'm going to touch on because, first of all, I mean, like you said, I do know a lot of Buffalo fans. My whole family's Buffalo fans.
Oh, I did not.
So
see that.
yeah, we're only that's technically my home city where I grew up.
Okay.
So 4 straight Super Bowl losses in the 90s. Of course, we know the Jim Kelly teams. They lost, on a chip shot field goal in 91 or, Super Bowl, whatever that was in 1991. But they also had an 18-year playoff drought. It was broken this year with a Tyrod Taylor-led Buffalo Bills team. And, they lost in probably the most boring game I've ever watched in my life against Jacksonville, that 10-3 game. Oh, my gosh, that was terrible. But either way, that 18-year playoff drought was broken because of a Baltimore Ravens collapse. But really, the one that I want to talk about the most is the Buffalo Sabres. Of course, the hockey guy is going to be talking about the Buffalo Sabres. But Buffalo is only a mere 100 miles from Toronto, where hockey is, where hockey reigns supreme. Buffalo has produced many NHL players, including one of the best in the entire league in Patrick Kane. And the Buffalo Sabres, they love the Sabres up there. They've existed for 47 years. They've gone to the playoffs 29 times. Over half the time that they exist, they are in the playoffs. And they've had some really good teams. In my opinion, they have the best goaltender of all time that came through there in Dominik Hasek. Mm-hmm. He's won 6 Vezinas. He has well over 350 wins in his career. And he never won a championship in Buffalo. The first year he left Buffalo, he went to Detroit. He won a Stanley Cup. So he won 2 Stanley Cups in Detroit, of course, 2002 and 2008. And also in the mid-2000s, they had fantastic teams. They lost 2 consecutive conference finals. Those teams were fantastic. Daniel Briere, Thomas Vanek, Chris Drury, Jason Pominville. They also kind of had a 2-goalie system with Marty Biron, but their starter, Ryan Miller, who at one time was recognized as the best goaltender in the NHL. Yeah. Two losses in the Stanley Cup final. They've never won a Stanley Cup final. Lost in 75 for the Philadelphia Flyers, and, of course, 99 to a stacked Dallas Stars team. So, Buffalo, my family, I love you guys. I'm sorry, but Buffalo, man, it is sad to be a fan of a team in the city.
And like I said, I respect their fans so much. I as being, I understand at least on one sports side with having a team who has a losing season for 97 years. Okay, really it was 20, but I just really respect that they come out and they support their team, and obviously you have the bitterness of them all, but you're right. I did not realize the Sabres have made the playoffs that many years, and I was actually surprised when I thought of Buffalo and kind of thinking, wait, they've had to win one. They've been in the play. Like, I've known they've been in the playoffs, but I didn't realize it was that many times. So one city I don't know if you have on your list, Jake, is Atlanta. I was thinking of Atlanta, they were just I mean, their hockey team was so bad that they're just like, just leave. We don't even want you anymore. The Braves lost. I mean, they were kind of the Bills of the 90s as well. And then you have the Falcons, who lost a 74-point lead in the playoff or in the Super Bowl against the Patriots here a couple years ago, who make it to the playoffs but can't really finish it. Is Atlanta on your list, or did they not make the cut?
No, Atlanta's definitely on my list. 1-3 in World Series is in the 90s. Of course, they won in 95.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, we all know the 28-3 jokes. The Falcons, and the Falcons have had good teams too over the years. They had the Warwick Dunn, TJ Duckett teams.
Yeah.
Of course, I won't say the quarterback's name, but the Dirty Birds. They've had really good teams. They were never able to do it. The Atlanta Hawks have been irrelevant forever. I mean, the St. Louis Hawks went to an NBA Finals, but wasn't the Atlanta Hawks.
Yeah.
And as far as the Thrashers are concerned, you bring up an awesome point. I mean, they were so bad for so long. They had 10, 11 years to right the ship. They had one really good team. They did have a really good team in 06, 07. They won their division. They won the Southeast Division, which consisted of Alexander Ovechkin-led Washington Capitals team, the Tampa Bay Lightning that had Marty St. Louis on it. But, they had 2 40-goal scorers on that team, Marian Hossa and Ilya Kovalchuk. They also had an aging Keith Tkachuk, but they were swept to the New York Rangers in the first round, including, I think they only scored 3 goals in the entire series. So, again, Atlanta, I'm sorry. I love you guys. I was a big Braves fan in the 90s. But it's pretty putrid down there, to be honest with you.
It is what it is. I wasn't even thinking about the Hawks, but yeah, I mean, it is. It really is amazing for a city that is nicknamed Hot Atlanta that they're just they're, like as you said, putrid. So what's another city you think deserves this amazing prestigious honor?
Well, I'll tell you, they haven't finished it yet, but they're happy right now because just 2 nights ago, less than 48 hours ago, the Washington Capitals are headed to the Stanley Cup final. But that was their first conference championship in 20 years. Capitals and Nationals have never won a Stanley Cup or have never won a championship for their league. Obviously, the Nationals never won a Stanley Cup. But the Nationals are always good. They they spend a lot of money, and the Washington Bullets went to two consecutive NBA Finals in the late 70s, one in 78, but they've had the name change, the whole rebranding because of issues, in the city and all that with the Wizards. And, it's been 25 years since the Redskins won the Super Bowl. And I'll tell you, honestly, coming from somebody that's in D.C. quite often, that's a Ravens town anymore.
Really?
It's a Ravens town because Baltimore's just up 95, just, an hour or two. It's a Ravens town now. The Redskins, they just lost it.
Yeah, it's you think, like you said, they had that success under Joe Gibbs, and really nothing since. So they keep trying and trying. They keep bringing coaches and keep bringing these high profile players, and nothing's happening with them. And as you said, the Capitals, I guess they beat the Pens this year, so that was kind of their Stanley Cup. But now they're going to actually go on and try to win the Stanley Cup, and seeing the Capitals fans on social media on Wednesday night, Jake, I'll be honest with you. I was happy for him. I really was. I do not want to see them win. I want to see Vegas take it, but it was kind of a good for you guys. I know you have stuck with them. I know they have had a lot of heartache. I know Ovechkin has tried and just can't get over that hump. And you know how that feels. When you're waiting for a team. Back in 2013 when the Pirates finally made the playoffs, I woke my wife up at 1 o'clock in the morning because I was watching the end of I forget who, we had to wait to see who lost, but I woke her up at 1 in the morning. I was like, we made it! We made the playoffs! And she goes, that's great, good night. And went back to sleep. So we know how that feels. You know how it feels to wait all that time and get it. So honestly, I'm happy for the Capitals fans, but now they're done. We need to see them be eliminated.
And you know me, I love Alexander Ovechkin.
Yes,
I absolutely love Alexander Ovechkin. I think he's the best goal scorer of of this generation. I can't say of our lifetime, but of this generation certainly. And like you said, good for them. Good for them. I'm really happy for them.
So with that, when we come back here, stay with us. We're going to be talking about the NHL playoffs. Jake is foaming at the mouth to talk about these NHL finals between the Golden Knights of Las Vegas and the Capitals of Washington. Stay with us on the G.
It's going down for real. It's going down for real. It's going down for real.
Jake Holmes. You can also catch us on Monday with Christian and Jonathan, and on Wednesdays now with Keith and Max, as Jeff unfortunately left us, but for some great reasons. So make sure you stay with us. The show comes out on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 6 a.m. You can catch it on pretty much anywhere you can get podcasts, obviously iTunes, and we're on Spreaker, iHeartRadio, and again, those shows come out on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 6 a.m. Make sure you visit the Public House Media website. Jake, did you know that Public House Media, we now have it's been about a month or so, but we have a store and people can go and get some Cheap Seats apparel. Did you know that?
Oh my gosh, that's fantastic.
Yes.
Anything for a shirt.
Yeah, so you can get Cheap Seats shirts. There's beanies on there, there's hats, there's coffee mugs or tea mugs, whatever you drink. But make sure you visit the Public House Media online store to get your apparel. If you listen, we hope you listen to other shows here on Public House Media, and you can get their apparel as well. So we are going to go into the NHL Finals. Like we said, they are set. They're ready to go with the Las Vegas Golden Knights and the Washington Capitals. Jake, I'm just interested to see what you say about this. What do you think about Vegas making the Stanley Cup Finals in their inaugural season?
See, I have different opinions than a lot of people. I think it's awesome for the league.
Yeah,
I think that it's awesome.
I 100% agree.
Yeah, I think it's awesome. I think that it brings in more. Of course, you can't really get any more than 32 teams in the National Hockey League, but this brings a lot of even more excitement to the city of Seattle, who's set to get a team in 2021-ish. But it brings a lot of excitement to them, especially if the rules are similar, able to choose from six forwards, 4 defense, and a goalie from each team. I think that it's awesome for the league. It brings more excitement throughout. A lot of people hate Vegas. They don't think that they should have a title in their first year, but you know what? They earned it. They earned it. I think it's awesome for the league.
Yeah, I agree. And I understand where people are coming from, saying they kind of gotta make their due. They gotta get in the league, but why? They did do what they needed to do to get into the league. This is their team that they have put together. Bravo to the front office and their coaching staff for putting this team together, getting them connected, getting them on the same page, and so quickly. They also, now they may not, Seattle might not have the pool of players that the Golden Knights have. I think I was talking to someone the other day saying that when Seattle comes in, these teams are going to say, whoa, we can't do what we just did with Vegas. We're not going to do that again. We're going to have to think this through. And I do understand that as well. These teams who had to give up players, had to make them available, they probably weren't really, really knowing what to expect when it came to this. So, but I really love that they made the finals. I love that how they did it in such a demanding fashion. I mean, they did not have one series that was really close. The Capitals, obviously, they went 7 games against Tampa Bay, took a 2-0 series lead, lost that, and then came back and won it. And when Jake, I'll be honest, when the Capitals lost that 2-0 series lead, I was like, makes sense. But,
well, it's telling. I think that it's telling for the group that they have. They went down 2-0 to Columbus. They came back, won the next 4. They finally got over the Pittsburgh hump.
Yeah.
They lost 3 consecutive games to the Tampa Bay Lightning, won the last 2. So I think it's telling about the group that they have. It's a high character group, and you know what, they're doing things that they haven't done the last couple of years. Sure, this isn't the most talented Washington Capitals team probably since the last missed playoffs. I believe it was 2013. This is the least talented team that they've had. But they've got the leadership. Alexander Ovechkin is playing fantastic hockey right now, along with Evgeny Kuznetsov. TJ Oshie's playing really well. Their stars have come out, and they're playing really great hockey. They're playing really great hockey. They deserve to be there.
Yeah, I agree. Excuse me, I agree. I think that this is going to be a very entertaining series to watch. I think that watching Vegas, the way that they got in here, the way that Fleury's playing right now, the way Holtby's playing, I think those goalies right now are standing on their heads with some of these saves they're making. That save the other night that Fleury made, I'm sure you know what I'm talking about, the full extension. He made the save, and then somehow, it was like he was wearing studded tires. I don't know how he dove back and made that save the other night, but Vegas is just, what a story there. And like you said, this is great for this team. They didn't have the dismal losing season like so many expansion teams or new franchises we've seen in the past that tend to do that. In any sport, not just hockey, but in any sport. And so I'm interested to see. A lot of people are saying, well, the pressure's going to get to them. I'm like, what do you mean? There's no pressure on them. It's their first season. Exactly. The pressure is all on the Capitals.
I agree. I agree 100%. I don't think there's any pressure on Vegas. I don't think there's any. If anyone had any pressure on it might have been Marc-Andre Fleury for the first couple rounds, just because of one of the reasons why Penguin fans wanted him out for 8 years or whatever, because of a couple perceived playoff failures, which I think is a bunch of nonsense. I don't think that he was that bad, but yeah, maybe him, but nobody else has any pressure on him. These are a bunch of misfit toys that are just playing hockey right now. They're a bunch of guys that their teams didn't want. So, good for them. I love the story. I think it's fantastic.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny because the players, it's if they lose, if they get swept in this series 4-0, and not one fan, and of course fans are going to get upset, but I'm sorry that we made it to the Stanley Cup Finals in our first season. Sorry about that. And NHL is considered the arguably the hardest championship to win. So for them to get this far, I'm sure they're saying, hey, this might not happen again. I don't see that happening. I think they're a very talented team. I think that they're going to be, they'll be competitive for years to come. But like we know, Jake, that even with a dynasty with teams that have amazing players, it's not the Capitals. It's not easy to get to the finals, and this could be each of these teams' only chance under the leadership that they have.
What's really scary to your point, with like what you just said. What's really scary with Vegas is they have $7 million of cap space. I know that this is like, of course, a few months from now, but they're only going to get better. They're not going to get worse. They're going to get better, and that's terrifying for the entire league. They literally had the luxury of paying Derek Brassard paying $1 million of Derek Brassard's contract.
Yeah.
Giving Pittsburgh $1 million, so Winnipeg couldn't get him. It's insane the amount of money that they have. They're only going to get better.
And then they had to end up playing them. Like, it just amazes me. It's like they knew.
It's amazing. George McPhee. George McPhee has done an absolutely unreal job with that team. I mean, just finding ways for these players to mesh. I mean, Riley Smith, William Karlsson, and Jonathan Marchessault right now is the best line in hockey. They mesh perfectly together. I mean, William Karlsson's not even a natural center. You know, I mean, he's center in that line. But yeah, I mean, what they've done in that coaching staff, of course, Gerard Gallant, who's been in the league for a million years, they've just done a fantastic job. I just can't say enough about it. It's fantastic, and they play hockey exactly the way that they should.
Yeah. You think Coach of the Year?
Oh my gosh, yeah. GM of the Year, Coach of the Year. I don't think that there's anyone even close.
Yeah, I agree, and so we'll see what happens here. Game 1 is this upcoming Monday in Vegas. Game 2 is Wednesday, next Wednesday, May 30th in Vegas, and then they go back to Washington for 2. For you non-hockey fans who don't know, then they'll do 2 in Vegas, 2 in Washington, Vegas, Washington, and Vegas. So, Jake, with that all said, who do you have in this series?
Well, I have a few matchups to watch, and I think that that's going to really affect the series. I think that it's going to be huge. Alexander Ovechkin versus Nate Schmidt, the right defenseman for Vegas, left wing for Washington. Obviously, they're very familiar former teammates. Nate Schmidt was given up by Washington in the expansion draft, and fluid skater versus the big shot. Also down the middle, you have William Karlsson and Nicholas Backstrom, 43 goal scorer versus one of the best defensive forwards in the game. And watch out for the left wing trap versus Vegas, some neutral zone forechecking strategies. Honestly, I think that this is going to be a very fast, entertaining Stanley Cup final to watch. I think that it's not going to be as well played as the last couple of years, but it's going to be more entertaining. It's going to be more entertaining to the casual fan. I have Vegas in 7. I think Marc-Andre Fleury is going to win the Conn Smythe. I think he's going to shut it down. Why not? He's 12-3 coming in, 12-3 in the playoffs coming in. He's got a save percentage of almost .950. He's saving 95 out of 100 shots faced. Yeah. He's playing ridiculous. Why not? Why not pick Vegas?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I actually picked Vegas in 6. I think there's no reason. It's one of those things. You ask me why. I say there's no reason to pick against them right now. They are firing on all cylinders. I said it, in the conference finals. I said the team that came out of here. We both said that the team that came out of the West was going to be the favorite. I'm going to stay with that. I think that Vegas is just all around playing just such dominant hockey right now. Fleury, I know Holtby's playing awesome right now as well. I just think that he's going to be a big reason why this team is going to go where they do. I think that, they just continue that into the NHL finals and will be 1 for 1, which is pretty impressive.
Yeah, hitting 1,000.
Yeah. So, obviously, Jake and I, Jake with just mounds and mounds of hockey, we'll continue with this next week, talking about the NHL finals. By then, we will be, we'll be two games into it, and we'll see where we are going back to Washington next Saturday. Stay with us here on the Cheap Seats. When we come back here, we will give you our bold predictions as well as our poll question. Stay with us with Jake and posted on our Facebook page, The Cheap Seats. You can follow us there. Obviously, Public House Media Cheap Seats. You can get the shows on there. They're always posted on there, as well as the poll questions from Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. So, Jake, we're going to, again, go into our bold predictions. I will give you mine first. And this might be my boldest prediction ever.
Oh, wow.
And if this happens, I expect you to fly out to Wisconsin and shake my hand.
Done. I will do it.
Here we go. The Las Vegas Golden Knights will not only have one shutout in the first 2 games, but 2. They will shut the Capitals out in the first 2 games.
You know what? What's crazy is the way Marc-Andre Fleury's playing. It's bold, but I mean, it's definitely possible. I might be buying I think Southwest has $49 flights right now or something. I might be heading out there.
Or 1 minute into the first game, we'll be like, never mind, it's gone.
Well, they've been scoring a minute in. I mean, Evgeny Kuznetsov scored in Game 1 against Pittsburgh about 50 seconds in, and Wednesday night, Alexander Ovechkin scored a minute 19 in.
Yeah,
so
if it wasn't for the first 2 minutes of periods, the Capitals wouldn't be in the finals.
Yeah, exactly. You're right. But mine is somewhat similar. I think, as far as like Stanley Cup Finals concerned, I think Washington is going to steal home ice from Vegas. They've been playing really great hockey on the road. They've only lost 1 game all playoffs on the road.
Yeah.
2. They've lost 2. They lost 1 in Tampa and 1 in Pittsburgh. But yeah, and include in that 1 win, it's going to be 1-1 after Game 2. I'm going to say that one of those games is 1-0.
Awesome. All right. Well, you heard it here, both on the NHL final side, and we will see what I can guarantee mine won't happen. But if it does, Jake, I
wouldn't be surprised if it did, man. I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be the least bit surprised.
Going back to March Madness, we actually started these bold predictions back in March when March Madness started. And my very first bold prediction, I think it was my very first one, I told Baxter that a 1 seed will go down in the first round and a 1 seed will go down in the second round.
Wow.
It was a bold prediction, and I wanted to just go out there, and I couldn't believe it. I was like, are you kidding me? But that was my most successful bold prediction. That always will be my most successful bold prediction. But anyway, so you heard right here mine. I say that the Vegas Knights will shut out in the first 2 games Washington Capitals, and Jake thinks that the Capitals will steal home ice advantage in the first 2 games. So these first 2 games have a lot to do. And we're just going to stay in the hockey world. Our poll question for today is very simple. Who do you think will take the NHL Finals, take Lord Stanley home, the Vegas Golden Knights or the Washington Capitals? So, again, make sure you visit the Public House Media Cheap Seats Facebook page and vote on that. And you heard it from Jake and I. We both are taking Vegas. What say you? Again, my name is Matt Coyne, along here with Jake Holmes. We hope that you have a fantastic weekend. Jake, do you have any parting shots for us?
No, I mean, just watch out. I mean, these Stanley Cup Finals obviously start on Monday. It's the conclusion of the greatest tournament in sports. And, I mean, just watch out for those matchups. It's going to be a very entertaining series championship, especially even if you're a casual fan. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch.
Yes, yeah. So, again, thank you to Bryce Burge for coming on and talking some racing with us. For you racing fans, a busy weekend. And, Jake, thank you for joining and for being